10 signs that where you're already living is already home. Home, when really, in the back of our minds, we know that the only place we could really live is Alberta. And that's the reason we moved here, because there's no other place like Alberta. I'm gonna go back home. You usually hear that being said by somebody going back home somewhere across the world or back home somewhere else in Canada, and they're going back home for a vacation. It kind of sounds kind of strange, eh? I'm gonna go back home for a vacation. So this wasn't home here in Alberta. So that's what I'm gonna talk about today. Where's home? For me, it's Alberta. For my wife, it's Alberta. We weren't born here, but we've lived here an awful long time. And you don't have to live here a long time to consider Alberta home, or anywhere else home for that matter. I'm speaking to all the people who are living somewhere, and we're all living somewhere these days. We're all living at home. You can't live anywhere else. You live at home. So the one decision that we all have to make is, where's home? It's the most important decision because that's where we're gonna invest most of our time, most of our money, most of our effort. We're gonna spend it, invest it at home. There's 10 signs that where you're already living is already home. The first sign is you haven't been to your old home for an awful long time. The second sign that Alberta, or wherever you're living, is home, is that you've had some kids here. So your kids were born here in Alberta, and for them, that's what's on their birth certificate. They're already here, they're already in school. It's going to be home for them until they decide to live somewhere else, if they do decide to live somewhere else. The third sign that Alberta is now home is that you don't have any stuff anywhere else. You've sold it all and you've brought it here. You've brought whatever you have left with you here. So you don't have a house somewhere else. You don't have a car somewhere else. You don't have a storage unit back in Ontario or back in Europe or Africa or the Philippines or in China. You don't keep any stuff there. You might have family there, but none of your stuff is there. So your stuff is all right here in Alberta. The fourth sign that Alberta is home is that you've either bought a house or signed a long-term lease here in Alberta. You wouldn't do that if you were a tourist. The fifth sign that Alberta is home is that you've started a business here in Alberta, or you've started a career that you can only do in Alberta. You know, you're working on the oil rigs, or you're doing something with the oil sands, or there's just a cluster of companies here that's nowhere else. You're not going to go to Nova Scotia or New Brunswick to do the same thing you're going to do here in Alberta. The sixth sign that Alberta is your home is fairly basic. You've changed your driver's license. You've changed your healthcare card, and they're now saying Alberta on them. So you wouldn't do that if you were only going to stick around for even a year or 2 or 3. You wouldn't go to all that trouble. The seventh sign that Alberta is your home is that you've joined certain groups, associations, bowling league, or a community association, or you've registered yourself with a provincial political party. The eighth sign that Alberta is your home is that you go on vacation every year, but it's only 2 or 3 weeks, and you're going back home. Like I said at the start of the video, you're going back home for a vacation, usually to visit family, but you're still calling it back home when really you live Out of the 52 weeks a year, you live 49 or 50 of them in Alberta. The ninth sign that Alberta is your home is you vote. You vote for politicians that align with your interests. And those politicians typically are representing other people where you're living right now who consider Alberta their home. So your interests are aligning with people who call Alberta home. And so you're voting alongside them to make sure your interests are looked after as well, because this is where you spend the bulk of your time. The 10th sign that Alberta is your home is that you have not set a date to go move anywhere else. So a lot of people I've talked to who are from somewhere else, whether it's from another country or another province, they'll tell me someday, and the key word is someday, they're going to go back home. So that's the 10th sign that Alberta is your home. You have no goal to be anywhere else. So that's a key sign that Alberta is your home. So why does it matter where your home is? The reason why you need to know where your home is that you need to know what to defend. Because two different places will have two different sets of interests. Obviously, the interests of people living in Ontario, places like Ontario or Quebec here in Canada, or places like England and Europe, and Africa and the Philippines and China, they all have different interests other than Alberta. So you need to decide what you're going to be loyal to. Are you going to be loyal to the interests of the place where you are right now, where you're earning all your money, where you've invested money in a house or a business, where your kids are going to school, where you eat, live, breathe, work, sleep? Are you going to defend the interests of that place, which is Alberta, where you're living right now? I think that you would defend where you're living right now. And if you're defending where you're living right now, then you're defending your home. You are defending the interests, your interests here at home. You're not going to defend the interests, somebody else's interests. You don't know what their interests are because you don't live there. When you decide where your home is, then you'll know what to defend. You'll know what your interests are. You won't have some pie in the sky idea that someday, you don't know what day, that you are going to move back home. It's what's most disturbing to me, and why I made this video is that obviously some people are confused. Many people in the media, many of what we call the politicians or the political class, if there is such a class of people, are a little confused here in Alberta. We fly that Canadian flag like all of Canada is our home, when really in the back of our minds we know that the only place we could really live is Alberta. And that's the reason we moved here, because there's no other place like Alberta. If you don't believe me, watch my video, The Shocking Truth About Alberta and Saskatchewan, and you'll come to understand just how big a deal Alberta really is in comparison to not only other provinces in Canada, but to other countries in the world. There really is no other place to be. Really, realistically, you aren't going to move to Nova Scotia to start a new business or a new career if you don't already have ties there. You're not going to go to Prince Edward Island. You're not going to go to even Quebec for multiple reasons if you're not French or from there. It's just not going to happen. Alberta is the place to be. It's always been the place to be. That's why many people flock here. Okay, so we're at the end of this video, and you're still not convinced that Alberta is your home, but you're still living here, you're working here, breathing the air and making some money, and one day you're gonna go back home wherever you came from. My challenge to you right now is to set a date, make a plan, and follow that plan as soon as possible to find your way back home, because that's where you should be. You should go back home. Now, if Alberta has now become your home, I have two challenges for you. One is to publicly admit that A, you live in Alberta, and B, Alberta is your home. And two is to vigorously defend your home, which is Alberta. And we have a number of videos that can educate you on Alberta. and how to defend Alberta. And I hope you keep on watching, and I hope you subscribe to this channel, because we'll be making more videos along this line.